Myself and my co-founders, Isabella Alahe Hughes and Dr. KJ Baisa, we actually all met on idealist.org, and we were in different parts of the world, but all from Hawaii. So I was based in Paris at the time, Isabella was in Abu Dhabi, and KJ was in LA, but we all were from Hawaii. I'm part Hawaiian, and we were brought together by the shared belief that there's so much incredible talent here locally in Hawaii, but there's no international platform for it. As we started to do more research, we realized that this was not just a problem in Hawaii, but it was also an issue throughout the rest of the Pacific, especially among indigenous contemporary artists. And so we created this platform that brings together the countries and continents linked by the Pacific, with Oahu kind of being the gathering place, which is actually what that word means. It took about 3 years to fundraise and plan and bring together our curators and a team of artists, which was 33 for the first one. So starting in about 2014, we got together, and then we opened in March of 2017. It was both. You know, that we had both supporters and naysayers, but I think it was important to have that balance, because those that were skeptical asked us really important questions in terms of how we constructed this, because once you build a biennial, it takes on a life of its own. So you want to make sure you do it right from the beginning. So all of those that had skepticism or questions eventually became some of our strongest allies, because we worked with them from the beginning to address any concerns. And then in terms of our supporters, we had an incredible outpouring of support from so many different artists and community members, and we ended up working with over 65 public and private organizations to pull off the first one. So through the generosity of different nonprofits and government organizations and just kind of grassroots groups, it all kind of came together. I think the principal one was Hawaii is a really special place with a delicate ecosystem and limited land, and so when you build something that is going to attract a lot of out-of-state visitors, you have to be very careful about what you're creating and who you're attracting, because we have limited resources here. We have, limited everything, and so I think that locals were concerned about this becoming too big or attracting too many people that would strain our natural resources. And then also, I think among the creative community, there was a concern that that we should first and foremost think about our local artists and our Hawaii artists. Like, if we're going to, put all this time and effort into it, what's our contribution to the local creative community? And so we really had to be thoughtful about first and foremost working with our local artists and our Hawaiian artists to build this biennial, so that it's not a biennial that's helicoptered in that could be anywhere in the world, but is a biennial that is based on this place and that is inspired by this place and this Aina, or land. And so I think we were able to assuage those concerns by working really directly with the local creative community to build a biennial that is distinctly of this place that you could see nowhere else. I think it starts with the approach. So how we even began, before we chose one artist or we chose a title or a theme or anything, we first went to our kapuna, our elders. So our curators met with elder artists on the island and asked them to gift them a name, which comes from Hawaiian culture and other Pacific cultures where you're gifted a name. For example, my auntie gifted my Hawaiian name. So meeting with different kapuna or leaders, you start to develop kind of a sense or an approach. And so the title, To Make Wrong, right now is actually the last line of one of our kapuna artists' poem called Manifesto. So he's our eldest artist in the biennial, and he was the first person we actually went to when kind of constructing this. So from that meeting came other kinds of strands or conversations. So the entire approach is tied together by something called an aha, or a carrier net. It's a Senate cord carrier net. So you start at the center of gifting the name, and then you have all these kinds of strands and approaches that emerge from there, whether it's non-Western uses of lands and thought patterns, or manawahine, which means female empowerment in Hawaiian. And then you start building out this Senate cord carrier net from this central strength, and that's very Aina or place-based. So yeah, I think that's number one. Start there. One thing that I'm really proud of our curatorial team for this year is they took a lot of risks that, so aesthetically this does not look like your typical biennial at all. They brought in artists that are very underrepresented, that are not shown in major institutions, and some of our artists are, but some of the works that we're showing this year are very cerebral and delicate and are not your huge, monolithic type sculptures, and so that you typically see in international biennials, and a lot of folks that are just not necessarily well represented in the international biennial circuit. So yeah, I'm very proud of our curatorial team for doing the research and putting in the time and taking that leap of faith. I will say the geographic focus is definitely something that sets us apart. There's no other institution or biennial, with the exception of Asia Pacific Triennial, that has this focus on the Pacific. And so I think until there's an overwhelming number of biennials and institutions showcasing art from the Pacific, it makes sense for us to continue to support this region. And it's also the region that we are a part of and are most connected to. So I think it's something that really sets us apart. What's so interesting is we have all these parallel histories throughout the Pacific, and as we get to know each other and commune with each other, we realize, like, oh, you experienced that, we also did in this way or this form, or oh, how do you say that word? Oh, our languages are so similar. And so there's all these kinds of cultural and historical connections. And a third of our artists are from Hawaii, but 2/3 of our artists are from all over the world. So it's still a very international biennial in that we showcase so many different artists from around the Pacific. So many. Yeah, I'd say economics is just a figure that we put out there because it's important that we find funding, but is not what drives us as a team. Measures of success for us is demystifying and breaking down stereotypes about Hawaii. There's a lot of misinformation out there about what is Hawaii, and also what are the cultures of the Pacific. Also, what does contemporary art look like coming out of those cultures, particularly indigenous cultures from the Pacific, because there's this kind of bifurcation of what is traditional art versus contemporary art, and it's a lot more fluid, It's especially like in our estimation. So I think our biennial really showcases that razor's edge, that line that you walk between your past and present, where you always have one foot in the other. You take what you learn from your ancestors and then your contemporary art training, and then you create this beautiful kind of line that's a tightrope between the two. And a lot of our artists are addressing that in their work. So the true measure of a successful biennial is making an impact on our local community, but also creating a platform so that our local community can learn about international art and it can nourish their own practice, and also for the greater community so they can learn about other artists, because we are the most isolated landmass in the world, and so not many people, we do get out obviously, but not everyone has the opportunity to go fly to Europe and see all of the institutions there, or go to Asia or even the mainland. And so bringing in international artists of that caliber serves as a form of education for our local community, and then it also gives international artists a chance to learn about this beautiful culture. So it's very much a symbiotic exchange. The first year was just about getting it off the ground, like, let's just make this happen. This year was really about developing further our identity and like what we want to say, and I think that we've done a good job of that this year. And then next year, I think it's getting to a place where we are compensating our artists fairly, and so it's more of that sustainability. But most biennials do not pay their artists wages, for their time. They sometimes give them an honorarium. Very few biennials fly in all of their artists. We fly in all of our artists so that they could be together and collaborate and give them honorariums and per diems and things like that. But in my opinion, that's not enough, because it doesn't fairly compensate them for all the time that they put in to make that work. And very few biennials do that. And so I think we have a long way to go. Yeah, in order to compensate fairly our artists, and we're at fault too. We've gotten better than last year, and we're trying to get better. But yeah, I think that's something that I really want to improve in our own organization, encourage other biennials to do, is actually compensate artists fairly for their work.